Imagine a fortress that wasn't protected by just stone walls or angry soldiers. Imagine a city that was protected by nature itself. In the 1600s, there was a place called s-Hertogenbosch. It was known as the Swamp Dragon because it sat in the middle of a deep, muddy, impossible marsh. You couldn't walk on it because you'd sink. You couldn't sail a boat on it because the water was too shallow. It was the perfect defense. Generals looked at this city and said, "It is impossible to take." But one man looked at that swamp and didn't see a problem. He saw a puzzle. And in 1629, he decided to do something that sounded like pure madness. He wasn't going to fight the city. He was going to fight the water. This is the story of how Dutch engineers did the impossible and turned a swamp into dry land right under their enemy's nose. To understand why this was such a big deal, we have to look at the bigger picture. By 1629, the Dutch Republic and the Spanish Empire had been fighting for a very, very long time. They called it the 80 Years' War. That is a lifetime of fighting. The Spanish controlled the southern part of the Netherlands, and the Dutch rebels controlled the north. Spain had built a ring of steel chain of fortresses to keep the Dutch locked in. The jewel in this crown was I know, it's a difficult name to say. The locals just call it Den Bosch. Den Bosch was special. It was the marsh fortress. The Spanish king, Philip IV, was confident that nobody could touch it. Previous Dutch leaders, like the famous Maurice of Orange, had tried to capture it twice. Both times, they failed miserably. They got stuck in the mud, literally. But in 1629, the Dutch had a new leader. His name was Frederick Henry, the Prince of Orange. He was known as the City Taker. Frederick Henry had a secret weapon. It wasn't a bigger cannon or a sharper sword. It was money. The Dutch Navy had just captured a massive Spanish treasure fleet filled with silver. Suddenly, the Dutch had cash to burn, and Frederick Henry decided to spend it all on the biggest gambling bet of the century. Here was the problem Frederick Henry faced. In a normal siege, you dig trenches. You dig zigzag lines in the ground to get close to the enemy walls without getting shot. But you cannot dig a trench in a swamp. As soon as you put a shovel in the ground, the hole fills up with water. The Spanish garrison inside the city, led by a tough commander named Grubendunk, was relaxed. They looked out from their walls at the miles of wet, boggy land and thought, let them come. They will drown before they get close. Frederick Henry arrived with a massive army, 24,000 foot soldiers and 4,000 cavalry. But his most important soldiers weren't the ones holding muskets. They were the ones holding shovels. He brought in thousands of laborers from all over the country. His plan was something that had never been done on this scale. If the water was the problem, he would simply remove the water. This is where the genius of Dutch engineering comes in. Frederick Henry ordered his men to build a wall. Not a stone wall, but a dike, a massive earth wall, 40 kilometers long, completely surrounding the city and the swamp. But he didn't stop there. He built 2 walls. One to keep the Spanish army out, and one to keep the city defenders in. Then, he did something incredible. He dammed up the 2 rivers that fed water into the swamp. He diverted the rivers around his camp. Now, he had a giant bathtub full of water with the city in the middle. He set up horse-powered mills, dozens of tip. These mills worked day and night, pumping the water out of the swamp and over the dikes. Slowly, day by day, the water level dropped. The mud began to dry. The swamp dragon was losing its swamp. The Spanish inside the city couldn't believe their eyes. The ground they trusted to protect them was turning into solid earth. And on that solid earth, the Dutch were digging their trenches, inching closer and closer. This operation was so famous that all of Europe was watching. Kings and queens were reading letters about it. It was the main event of the year. If you look at the history books today, or even search online, you will find that this specific event is often referred to as the Siege of s-Hertogenbosch, of how to win a war using mathematics and shovels instead of just brute force. But the Spanish didn't give up easily. They sent a relief army to attack Frederick Henry from the outside. They tried to break his dikes. They even tried to invade the Dutch homeland to distract him. There was a moment of panic. The Spanish army captured a nearby town, Amersfoort. People in Amsterdam were terrified. They told Frederick Henry, "Come back. Save us." But Frederick Henry was stubborn. He said, "No, I'm not moving until I have the dragon." He trusted his dikes to hold the Spanish back. And they did. The relief army couldn't break through the Dutch lines. Back at the city, the end was near. The Dutch engineers, now working on dry land, dug right up to the city walls. They dug tunnels under the main fortress gates. They packed these tunnels with gunpowder. On a September morning, the ground shook. A massive explosion blew a hole in the defenses of the impregnable city. The Dutch soldiers stormed the breach. The Spanish commander, Grobendonck, realized it was over. The swamp was gone. The relief army had failed. The walls were broken. On September 14, 1629, the swamp dragon surrendered. It was a staggering victory. It wasn't just a military win. It was a psychological blow to the Spanish Empire. The Dutch had proven that they could conquer not just the Spanish army, but nature itself. The siege of s-Hertogenbosch changed the map of the Netherlands forever. It secured the southern border and proved that the Dutch Republic was here to stay. Today, if you visit this city, you can still see traces of the old fortifications, though the swamp is long gone. It reminds us that sometimes the biggest obstacle isn't the enemy in front of you, but the ground beneath your feet. I hope you enjoyed this story of mud, water, and determination. If you did, please give this video a like. Really helps the algorithm find other history lovers like you. And don't forget to subscribe to HistoryHearth for more stories from the past. See you in the next video.